Hello and welcome to part 2 of the three-part series of automating Azure Resource creation with VSTS and KFS. In the previous video, we saw how to create a service principal name both in Portal and Powershell. In this video, we will see how we can use the service principal name and deploy Azure resources with Powershell, and then we'll see how to set up a basic deployment pipeline in VSTS to deploy this particular resource with PowerShell, and at the end we'll see how we can make our deployment pipeline just a little bit more flexible. So let's get started. So I have my VSTS open in here, and I have created a repository. If you just look at the code, I have a Git repository with Azure PowerShell code in it, and I have a simple VNet. So let's just quickly switch into Visual Studio and see what the code looks like. It has got some input parameters and it is set to some default values. I have a resource group name, tenant ID, SPN, service principal name ID, service principal secret, and location for where I want to deploy my resources. I have my VNet and a front-end subnet mask and the corresponding address spaces. So I have created a simple function which kind of first checks if a particular resource group exists. If it does not, then it creates a resource group, and then it creates a virtual network if it does not exist, and then it creates a front-end subnet mask if it does not exist, and then assigns that particular subnet masks into the Azure network, virtual network, and that's it. So let's quickly see if I can execute this particular script from my local machine. I have previously executed this, so I think it should be quick. Since the resource exists, it's just gonna skip all the steps. Just want to make sure that everything works fine. Just run them. You can see some of the log informations that are being printed. Yeah, you can see the complete resource being printed out here, so everything looks good. So let's quickly check this in. You can see that there's some change in here. So even before I check in, let's create a deployment pipeline. Right now, if you go check in here, I just have a Git repository. I don't have anything else or build definitions or release definitions. So let's quickly create a release definition. I click on the release, I clicked on release definition. Okay, let's check the empty process. Just taking some time to load. Let's name the environment as, say, staging. Yeah. And then let us set an artifact to this particular release definition. Let's pick up get, and let's pick the source repository as Azure Partial. Default branch as master. Default version as latest from default branch. And then I'm going to keep it as it is. Yeah, let's set up a continuous pipeline tree deployment trigger. I just have to enable this. Let's go into this phase. Let's set up. This is fine. You can see that the agent queue was hosted environment, hosted VSTS 2017. So this is fine. Let me just quickly add a new build step, and we're gonna pick up Powershell, and then we're gonna go into the Powershell. Let's say Azure partial deployment staging. Yeah, that should be fine. File path. Let's pick up the script path. Go in here, vnet, and the script. I think I did not pick it up. Okay, it did. Okay, let's just do this again. Hit an OK. It's selected now. Right now I'm not going to pass any argument because I have set some default values. Later we'll come back and see how we can use this section of the code. I'm just going to hit save. Yep. And then let me just quickly go back in here. You can see that this is the resource group. So let's see if that particular resource group already exists. Portal.azure.com. Just gonna log in. Click password. It's loading the page. The page is loaded. Let's quickly see all the resource group that we have and check if that particular resource group already exists. You can see I already have demos on it. Network resource group, and I already have VNet. So let me just quickly delete it. Let me just pick this up and delete this. Yeah. So while we're just gonna wait a couple of seconds for that to get deleted. The resource is deleted now. So let us, since we have set up a continuous integration trigger, so let's quickly see what are the changes that I made in the script. I just removed the subscription, which is not actually needed to deploy it. So I'm just gonna comment this back. I need to make this one change in here. Just have to comment this part of the code, which isn't really necessary. Once I made this change, I'm gonna deploy it. Removed subscription ID and commit and then sync. Let's see if this can trigger our automation deployment. We have deleted the resource as well. You can see that there's no resource by that name. What was the name? Let's just quickly check here. Demos on a network RG. You can see that it's not in here. So let's go back to the release folder or the tab. It's loading. Let's see if the release gets triggered. Now we can see that after we push the code, the release has been triggered. I made a mistake. I left the release definition as the default. We're gonna change it. Can I change it now? Let me just quickly check if we can. Azure Powershell release. Okay, I can change it. So let me just quickly go back and see what's the status of our release. It's release 1. Let's look at the logs if we can. It's loading, it's in progress. If we go into logs, okay, it is trying to deploy right now into the staging environment. Okay, the script has successfully executed. Let's quickly see some logs that we had flushed out. You can see that all the information has been flushed out here. You can see creating virtual networks in subnet, checking if the network was there, created all this resource group required, the network and the subnet, everything, and then it was successfully. Let's quickly go back and see if that resource is in here. Demo Sonnet network resource group. Yes, the resource in here, and the virtual network is also there. Let me see if I can go in and check the subnet. Subnet is in here. You can see, yeah, all the values are in here. So We were successfully able to create a partial script to deploy Azure resources, put it in a CD pipeline, and push it to cloud. So let's see how we can make this thing better. Like say, let me go back to this one. We go back to the release definition and edit. Imagine I have multiple environments. So let me just quickly add an environment, like say, and let it be an empty process, and I call this as production, okay? And let me set the trigger of this environment as pre-deployment approval enabled, and let me set myself as approver. Yeah. So yeah, made this change, and I have to just redo the same task in here, and let me call it as partial, and then rename this as Azure partial deployment for production. File path, I'm gonna pick the source file from in here, tap on OK. Arguments fail and standard, I'm just gonna keep it as default. I'm gonna save this. Now we are using the same script to deploy to two different environments. At this time, I wanna have a flexibility where I can change some of the parameters or all of the parameters of this particular script. So that is when we make use of these parameters in here, and from the continuous deployment pipeline we can override this all these parameters. Like say for development environment I use these values, and for production environment I have a different subscription, and I can override those values in my continuous deployment pipeline. So let's quickly see how we can do that. So I'm gonna just not gonna recreate a complete new environment and redeploy it. So rather than that, I'm just gonna override this particular parameter in here, that is the resource group, and see if I can create two different resource group for two different environments. Yeah. So I just have to come back in here and create variables in my deployment pipeline. Let's say dev resource group, yeah, and I put it a value as Sanat dev vnet resource group. So let me create one more. It was supposed to be staging. Yeah, sorry. Let me say staging, staging, and then create one for production, prod resource group, and say Sanat prod vnet resource group, and set the scope of this to staging, and set the scope of this to production. The scope comes into picture when I can have same name in here, and then same name gets different values in different environments, but just for the sake of it, I've just kept it differently. So let me just quickly save this and go back to my definition, and let's see how I can override those parameters in my deployment pipeline. So I come here and I say edit this particular definition, going to staging, going to this partial arguments. All I have to do is this one. I will just pick this up, the resource group argument, and I have to take this off. This is how you refer a parameter in Azure, the PowerShell. And if I have to override that, assign a particular value of my variable that I just assign, all I have to do is go here, take this value in here, go back to tasks, and then set this up and hit save. I'm gonna do exactly same thing in my production PowerShell arguments. I'm just gonna paste that and then refer to this value. Go back to task and then just replace it and hit on save. So we can manually trigger this release. We already saw if I just go make some code changes and if I check in, it automatically triggers, or I can just create a release from here. Let's still go back and do something in here, like say just a comment triggering a release. Now I can see there is a change. I just say added comment, and if I push it, comment and push it, yes, you can see that code is getting pushed into a particular branch. That's my master branch, and the code is successfully pushed. Let's see if this can trigger the release. Let's go in all definition. Just wait for okay. It's already triggered. So let's go into release 2 and see what's happening in the logs. You saw that I created a pre-deployment approval for my production environment, and it needs approval from me. So let's see how that particular thing works. Yeah. We could see that our staging environment deployment is successful, and we got a message in here that is waiting for the approval. So let me just quickly, before we even approve it, usually what we do is we go back and check if all that we expected is deployed, and then it is working fine. You can see that we overrided the value in here and saw that renamed it to Sonata staging.vnet resource group, and it is created. So let's go back and say everything looks fine and approve it. As soon as I approve it, it triggers my production environment deployment, and then it takes some time, and then we can see that it deploys to production as well. Let me just refresh this, and we can see that it is in progress. It takes some time, and once that is done, we can see we can go come back and see if that particular group for prod gets created as well. So right now it is waiting for the agent. Yeah, okay. We can see that the production environment is also deployed, and based on the values that we said, let's see if a production VNet is created as well. We can see that there is Saran-prod-VNet resource group and staging resource group. These were the two resource groups that we override in the continuous deployment pipeline from the default values. So everything is working. So that's it for this particular video. Thank you for watching.